Merry Christmas, everyone. Our chalice lighting words are responsive. Please respond with the italicized bold words that are in your order of service and also on the screen. Blessed is the fire of our faith and the chalice of our community. Blessed is the transient flame we kindle here. Blessed is the light of the eternal. A year ago, and likewise 2 years ago, we gathered only through Zoom for our Christmas Eve service. This year, here we are in the flesh, and a welcome to those who are joining us on Zoom. That we are here is good news. In fact, this year, since the last Christmas Eve, we've seen some positive signs. Has it been a good year? I hope it has been a good year for you. And whether it's been a good year for the world feels maybe just a little too early to tell for sure. There are some indications that maybe some things started to get pointed in a positive direction, but only time will tell. There is a learnable reality, a truth which is greater than whatever the ego finds gratifying to believe. We may have seen this basic idea beginning this year to recover from the disrespect it has recently suffered. Too early to be sure. A former president who has tried to be above the law may be near to being held accountable after all. Too early to tell. A war in Ukraine may be turning back the ambitions of tyranny. Still too early to tell. The COVID pandemic seemed to be coming under control. There is currently a small spike, but much smaller so far than previous spikes, though combination with flu and respiratory syncytial virus presents us with what some are calling a triple-demic. Time will tell. 2022 saw signs that the world may be beginning to get serious about addressing climate change after all. Surveys show awareness of and concern about climate change is growing. In August, the U.S. enacted an omnibus climate and energy bill, the largest single step Congress has ever taken to address climate change. Electric vehicle sales were up 62% globally in the first half of 2022 compared to 21. Shifts away from fossil fuel are happening a little, too little, too late, or a good start toward more to come. Too early to be sure. The world population reached 8 billion in November, yet the growth rate is slowing and the world poverty rate continued to decline very slowly. Are we building a world where everyone can have a standard of living above miserable? Well, maybe we are. Still too early to tell. In the midst of this uncertainty, with tentative pointers toward a possible brighter future, here we come to Christmas. It's the anniversary of that time that we by convention celebrate, of the time when, according to legend, God became flesh and was simultaneously human and divine. Christmas. There is a power in this annual celebration in the darkest days of the year that we should not ignore. At this time of year, our yearnings take on the image of the shepherds with their eyes cast to the heavens, hoping to see the rising of a star or hear a herald angel's song. We descended from hunter-gatherer tribes that were successful in battle against neighboring tribes. A proclivity to violent conflict is embedded in our DNA, but we know it isn't the only proclivity embedded in us. As a mother protects her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should we cherish all living beings, says the Metta Sutta. That boundless heart was also necessary for our species' survival and is also woven into our DNA. So like those shepherds, we look to the skies to see what may be rising, to hear what song may herald. We pray that love will more abundantly become flesh and dwell among us, that compassion more luxuriantly flourish in human hearts. We know that the divinity of humankind is the humanity of God, and that everyone who serves love is a child of God, and everyone who bears love is a parent of God. And this we celebrate. In the bleakness of winter, we celebrate these discoveries cloaked as they may be in the garments of legend. God is not greater than life, and life not less than God. In this season, in these times, our attention is especially drawn to making real what is yet but tentative and possible, a world in which every cradle is visited by the three good monarchs of faith and hope and love, a world in which Christmas is with us always, and every birth is universally recognized as the birth of God among humankind, and thus every child a Christ child, and every song a song of angels. Unitarian history makes clear that Christmas is the Unitarian holiday. Prior to 1850, Christmas celebration was culturally and legally suppressed and thus virtually non-existent. The Puritan community found no scriptural justification for celebrating Christmas and associated such celebrations with paganism and idolatry. Then, a radical transformation of Christmas began, and Unitarians were at the forefront in most of the transforming. Christmas today means putting a tree indoors and decorating it. That was a practice in Germany, brought to the United States in the early 1800s by the Unitarian minister, Reverend Charles Follin. Christmas means old Ebenezer Scrooge's heart opens up to compassion and joy. In 1843, a Unitarian named Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol remains the most widely read aloud book in the English-speaking world and is theatrically performed in hundreds of venues around the country every year. Other popular Christmas tales, such as It's a Wonderful Life and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, are but reworkings of Charles Dickens's Unitarian gospel. Dickens's tale of generosity, gratitude, and the joy of family gathering is fundamentally Unitarian. Christmas means dashing through the snow, one-horse open sleighs, bells that jingle, and laughing all the way. That's the song Jingle Bells by the Unitarian James Pierpont. I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day is by Unitarian Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. John Bowring, who gave us Watchmen Tell Us of the Night, and Noel Regney, who wrote Do You Hear What I Hear, were also Unitarians. Christmas also means a focus on ending war and violence. Peace on earth to all goodwill, say the angels in the Gospel of Luke.
For most of the history of Christendom, Luke's angels have been taken as referring to a private, personal peace. Few imagined that peace on earth actually meant we should stop killing each other. And then, in 1849, with a war in Europe and the U.S. war with Mexico weighing on his mind, Unitarian minister Reverend Edmund Hamilton Sears wrote a carol, "It Came Upon the Midnight Clear," that made peace on earth about ending war. Beneath the angels' strain have rolled 2,000 years of wrong, and man at war with man hears not the love song which they bring, he decried. His lyrics raised objections from a number of Christian conservatives of the time. They said contemptuously that Sears's hymn was just the sort of thing you would expect of a Unitarian. They were right about that. If Christmas season today is a time when our hopes turn to ending war and truly bringing peace on earth, it's because a Unitarian minister wrote a song inviting us to imagine the day when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors fling, and the whole world give back the song which now the angels sing. This really is our holiday. From the Christmas tree to the jingling bells, to the Scrooge story, to the message of peace on earth, Unitarians made Christmas what it is today.
I love this poem by Mary Oliver. One, it's written by Mary Oliver and it's got animals in it. But I also enjoy it because it tells about the miracle waiting for us beyond human hubris, where we can be welcomed onto this planet Earth. Says a country legend told every year, go to the barn on Christmas Eve and see what the creatures do as this long night tips over. Down on their knees they will go, the fire of an old memory whistling through their minds. I went, wrapped to my eyes against the cold. I cracked the barn door, and I peered in. From town, the church bells spilled their midnight music, and the beasts listened, yet they lay in their stalls like stone. Oh, the heretics, not to remember Bethlehem, or the star as bright as the sun, or the child born on a bed of straw, to only know of the dissolving now. Still, they drowsed on, citizens of the pure physical world. They loomed in the dark, powerful of body, peaceful of mind, innocent of history. Brothers, I whispered, it is Christmas. And you are no heretics, but a miracle. Immaculate still as when you thundered forth on the morning of creation. As for Bethlehem, that blazing star, it still sailed in the dark looking for me. Caught in its light, listening again to its story, I curled against some sleepy beast who nuzzled my hair as if I were a child and warned me the best it could all night.
Next hymn is by another Unitarian, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I heard the bells on Christmas Day.
This story, Christmas Day in the Morning, was written by Pearl S. Buck, illustrated by Mark Bruner, and first published in 1955. It's a lovely reminder that sometimes the most meaningful gift doesn't come wrapped in a box. He waked suddenly and completely. It was 4 o'clock, the hour which his father had always called him to get up and help with the milking. Strange how habits of youth clung to him. Still 50 years ago, his father had been dead for 30 years, and yet he waked at 4 o'clock in the morning. He had trained himself to turn over and go to sleep. But this morning, because it was Christmas, he did not try to sleep. He slipped back in time, as he so easily does nowadays. He was 15 years old and still on his father's farm. He loved his father. He hadn't realized it until one day, a few days before Christmas, when he overheard what his father was saying to his mother. "Mary, I hate to call Rob in the mornings. He's growing so fast and he needs his sleep. If you could see how he sleeps when I go in to wake him up, I wish I could manage alone." "Well, you can't, Adam." His mother's voice was brisk. "Besides, he isn't a child anymore. It's time he took his turn." "Yes," father said slowly, "but I sure do hate to wake him." When he heard these words, something in him woke. His father loved him. He had never thought of it before, taking for granted the tie of their blood. Neither his father nor his mother talked about loving their children. They had no time for such things. There was always so much to do on the farm. Knowing now that his father loved him, there would be no more loitering in the morning and having to be called again. He got up after that, stumbling with sleep, and pulled his clothes on. His eyes still tight shut, but he got up. And then on that night before Christmas, that year when he was 15, he lay there for a few minutes thinking about the next day. They were poor, and most of the excitement was in the turkey they had raised themselves, and in the mince pies his mother made. His sisters sewed presents. His father and mother always bought something he needed, not only a warm jacket, but maybe something more, such as a book. And he saved and bought them each something too. He wished that Christmas when he was 15, he had a better present for his father. As usual, he had gone to the 10-cent store and bought a tie. It had seemed nice enough until he lay there thinking the night before Christmas, and then he wished he'd heard his father and mother talking in time for him to save for something better. He lay on his side, his head supported by his elbow, and looked out the attic window. The stars were bright, much brighter than he ever remembered seeing them, and one was so bright, he wondered if it were really the Star of Bethlehem. "Dad," he had once asked when he was a little boy, "what's a stable?" "It's just a barn," his father replied, "like ours." Jesus had been born in a barn, and to a barn the shepherds and the wise men had come, bringing their Christmas gifts. The thought struck him like a silver dagger. Why should he not give his father a special gift too, out there in the barn? He could get up early, earlier than 4 o'clock. He could creep into the barn and get all the milking done. He'd do it alone, milk and clean up. And when his father went out to start milking, he'd see it was all done, and he would know who had done it. At 2:45, he got up and put on his clothes. He crept downstairs, careful of the creaky boards, and let himself out. The big star hung low over the barn roof, a reddish gold. The cows looked at him sleepy and surprised. He whispered to them, and they accepted him placidly. He fetched some hay for each cow and got the milking pail, and the big milking cans. He had never milked all alone before, but it seemed almost easy. He kept thinking about his father's surprise. His father would come in and call him, saying that he would go get things started while Rob was getting dressed. He'd go to the barn, open the door, and then he'd go get the 2 big empty milk cans. But they wouldn't be waiting or empty. They'd be standing in the milk house, filled. The task went more easily than he'd ever known it to before. Milking for once was not a chore. It was something else, a gift to his father, who loved him. He finished, the 2 milk cans were full and he covered them. Then he closed the milk house door carefully, making sure of the latch. He put the stool in its place by the door and hung up the clean milk pail. Then he went out of the barn and barred the door behind him. Back in his room, he had only a minute to pull off his clothes in the darkness and jump into bed, for he heard his father up. He pulled the covers over his head to silence his quick breathing. The door opened. "Rob," his father called. "We have to get up, son, even if it is Christmas." "All right," he said sleepily. "I'll go on out," his father said. "I'll get things started." The door closed and he laid still, laughing to himself. In just a few minutes, his father would know. His dancing heart was ready to jump from his body. The minutes were endless. 10, 15. He didn't know how many. And then he heard his father's footsteps again. The door opened and he lay still. "Rob." "Yes, Dad." His father was laughing, a sobbing sort of laugh. "Thought you'd fool me, did ya?" His father was standing behind his bed, feeling for him, pulling away the cover. "It's Christmas, Dad." He found his father and clutched him in a great hug. He felt his father's arms go around him. It was dark and they could not see each other's faces. "Son, I thank you. Nobody ever did a nicer thing." "Oh, Dad, I want you to know I do want to be good." The words broke from him of their own will. He didn't know what to say. His heart was bursting with love. "Well, I reckon I can go back to bed and sleep," his father said after a moment. "No, Hark, the little ones are waked up. I've never seen you children when you first saw the Christmas tree. I was always in the barn. Come on." He got up and pulled his clothes on again, and they went down to the Christmas tree. Soon the sun was creeping up to where the star had been. Oh, what a Christmas. And how his heart had nearly burst again with shyness and pride as his father told his mother and made the younger children listen about how he, Rob, had got up by himself. "The best Christmas gift I ever had, and I'll remember it, son, every year on Christmas morning so long as I live." They both had remembered it. And now that his father had passed, he remembered it alone, that blessed Christmas dawn, when alone with the cows in the barn, he had made his first gift of true love.
So, what's waiting for you under the tree? In this season of exchanging gifts, let's do keep in mind that the greatest gift is the one that's given to us every morning, the gift of each new day. These are lyrics by Peter Meyer about the gifts of Christmas morning. There could be a blue kazoo, a pair of ruby shoes, a silky new fetching red kimono, a Pakistani rug, an Elvis Presley mug, or the very best of Perry Como. There could be a tube of Instant Bond, a Harry Potter wand, or little strips to help you quit snoring. An anti-aging cream, a healthy self-esteem waiting there for you on Christmas morning. Then again, in light of life's uncertainties, you may not find a single one of these, but guaranteed underneath the tree will be a brand new day begun. And the ones who love you and the turning earth and a great big shining sun. You might like a better job, a diamond ring from Bob, a cabin place on Lake Okeechobee. You may pray to be released or for Middle Eastern peace or a sword of light like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can bring your list to Santa's knee. All he's going to say is, we will see. But guaranteed underneath that tree will be a brand new day begun. The ones who love you, the turning earth, and a great big shining sun. And if that's all you get for Christmas, in spite of all your wishes, you might hang your head and go back to bed, or you might discover instead that when you wake and see the day and on the earth you read your name and cut the gold ribbons around it, you might be surprised and even realize that you got everything you wanted.
I see a star, a shining star. How it pierces the night with its wondrous light. I see a star, one shining star.
It was Christmas Eve in the mountains of Tennessee, and as a 5-year-old, I was so excited. It was snowing, and my dad was going to take us sledding. Mom and the other mother stayed back at the house talking and cooking. 2 dads took a pack of kids to the big hill. When we got to the big hill, my eyes grew really big, and I couldn't wait for my turn for the one sled we had in the family. And when it was my turn, my dad said, "No, that's too big for you. You go down the little kids' hill." And I said, "No, I'm going down the big kids' hill." Nope. And so we argued for a while, and I took the sled and I went down the big kids' hill. Boy, I was going so fast and faster, and then too fast. I couldn't control the sled. I couldn't stop. I was so scared, and I didn't end the sled ride until I smacked right into a tree head first at the bottom of the hill. My father came running down the hill, terrified, gathered me in his arms and went right back up the hill, looking for a police car or someone who could take me to the hospital. Meanwhile, that pack of kids went running to the house and came through the door bursting, yelling, "Kimmy is dead, Kimmy is dead." One mother heard Kenny, that was my friend, and the other mother heard Kimmy, which was me. They soon straightened it all out, and my mother found a car to go look at which hospital I ended up at. I was unconscious during this whole time. And when I came to, I was in a police car and the lights were flashing and the siren was going. And I was looking at all these bloodied handkerchiefs going back and forth from the front of the police car to my dad put over my head. I got really scared. I said, "Is that my blood?" "Yes." "Am I going to die, Daddy?" "No." And he just rocked me closer and further. My mother and father united at the hospital. The first one turned us away. It took a while to find one. And they never left my side as they put 63 stitches into me to fix me. I had a sprained back that still hurts me today. I had a concussion, and I still carry those scars today. I'd be happy to show you later. So there I was, and my parents took me home. And they laid me down on the couch in front of the Christmas tree because I was on a concussion watch, so they had to keep with me. And my brothers and sisters came downstairs and told me how much they loved me, and they were so glad that Kimmy wasn't dead. And they gave me their allowance. They gave me pennies and nickels, and one sister even gave me a dime. And all I could do was just stay there still on the couch and take it all in. It was a rough start to a Christmas, but I remember it as my favorite Christmas. I never felt so loved, and I loved so much. So whenever I look at Christmas lights, I try not to hold on to what has scarred me in life, but to embrace the power of love that taught me that even in the darkest of nights, we are never alone.
"'Tis indeed the season to be jolly. Our next carol is Deck the Halls." few moments, our choir will sing, "We Seek the Tiny King." And that's got me thinking about those seekers of tiny kings. What little monarch might you be looking for this season, and why? I'm thinking about those visitors to Mary and her newborn babe. In the Gospel of Matthew, it's the Magi. In Luke, it's the shepherds. They go, they visit Mary and her babe, and then they leave. What are they doing? Why do they go? Was it worth the trip? Matthew's Magi, astrologers, tell Herod that they are going off a verse in the book of the prophet Micah that said, "But you, O Bethlehem of Ephrathah, who are one of the little clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to rule in Israel." So these astrologers saw a star, which I guess twinkled in a funny way that made them think Micah's prophecy must be being fulfilled at long last right then. "A child has been born King of the Jews," they said, "for we observed his star. We have come to pay him homage," they said. And then the same star goes before them, leading them on, and it stops over the house where Mary and babe are. This, of course, is not how stars or even comets or meteors behave. Those Magi really wanted there to be a Messiah, and they are astrologers. Astrology being ready-made for putting into it what one wants to be there. This is the great utility of astrology. It helps us see more clearly what our hearts in fact desire, helps reveal the yearnings we have inside that we might not have noticed. And these astrologers evidently were hoping hard for a new ruler in Israel. In Luke, the visitors are shepherds to whom an angel has appeared saying, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is the Messiah, the Lord." The angels didn't say what the shepherds were supposed to do with this information. The shepherds spontaneously decided among themselves, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." They just wanted to go. Both Matthew's Magi and Luke's shepherds just want to see the child. They don't cause the fulfillment of a prophecy. They don't cause the birth to happen, or they don't facilitate the babe becoming a king. They don't do anything. The Magi bring gifts, but since we know Jesus grew up in humble conditions, neither the gold nor the market value of the frankincense or myrrh was sufficient to raise the family really out of poverty. Essentially, these visitors don't do anything except bear witness, which is all they wanted to do. They just want to bear witness and then go on their way. They go back to their lives. Seeing what they saw, we can only imagine, transformed them in some way. The Gospels don't tell us anything about that. Neither Matthew's Magi nor Luke's shepherds ever appear in the story again, but we can only imagine that something was different for them after that encounter. They have seen this thing, and seeing it makes nothing different, and yet makes everything different. So the question this raises is, what do you need to see? What tiny king do you seek, traveling far, following the burning of your hearts? What are you seeking not to have, not to do anything with, but just to see, to bear witness to be aware of, to stand for just a moment in the presence of? What is it that might transform your life just by you showing up to notice it? Joan Tollefson suggests that what we seek, what we just need to see, is our own despair, our discouragement, our anger or self-pity, just to look directly at that babe of ourselves, notice it, bear witness to it, just see it. This will transform it. Like Matthew's Magi and Luke's shepherds, we don't have to do anything. We only need to see. She writes, part of waking up is becoming sensitive to how we become discouraged, how we close down, where we go for false comfort. To wake up is to become aware of the tendency to judge ourselves, to take our failures personally, to fall into despair, self-pity, depression, frustration, anger, or wherever we tend to go when we believe the story that we are a person who can't do it right. Seeing all of this is enough. Awareness is its own action. We don't need to analyze it or impose changes based on our ideas of what should be happening. Just being awake to the present moment as it is, as seeing clearly what is happening. This is transformative. We are simply awake here and now. End quote. So suppose you could look at your own frustration or sadness, your own self-judgment or anger, your sense of failure. Suppose you could look at it lying before you like a baby in a manger. And you are there not to quash it or banish it, but to honor it. And despair weighs on us most heavily when we are convinced it isn't legitimate. So just see it. Recognize and honor it as a legitimate and perfectly natural thing to arise in a human being who is going through exactly what you've been going through. Bear witness to it and watch what it transforms into on its own. That's a tiny king worth seeking.
Seek the tiny king, traveling afar, following the brightest star, over field and fountain, over moor and mountain, following the star. We seek the tiny king.
The great Unitarian religious educator Sophia Lyon-Faz reminds us that every night a child is born is a holy night. She writes, "For so the children come, for so the children come, and so they have been coming, always in the same way they come. Born of the seed of humankind, no angels herald their beginnings, nor prophets predict their future courses. No wise men see a star to show where to find the babe that will save humankind. Yet each night a child is born is a holy night. Parents sitting beside their children's cribs feel glory in the sight of a new beginning. They ask, where and how will this new life end, or will it ever end? Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, and a time for worshiping." Our next carol is, "O Come All Ye Faithful." Will you please rise in body or spirit?
The evening offertory affords you the opportunity to contribute to a discretionary fund providing confidential assistance to those facing emergency financial need. I don't get very many requests. So when I do get one, I try to honor it. And I got a request this year at the Christmas Eve service, do the innkeeper's tale. I had done that story the very first Christmas Eve that I was with this congregation in 2013. And I said, but I can't do that again because we just spent a whole Sunday service explaining how there was no inn, there was no stable, that they stayed, the guest room was full, so they stayed in the main room where animals were, and that's why there was a manger there. And he said, I think at Christmas time, most of us are pretty practiced at dealing with cognitive dissonance. So, in the spirit of cognitively dissonant cheer, I offer you for one last time the innkeeper's tale. A priest, a rabbi, and a Buddhist monk walk into a bar. Into my bar, in fact. And this is no joke. Let me back up. My name is Louis Knight. I run a respectable establishment down on Staten Island. Got a bar downstairs, 6 rooms upstairs that we rent out by the night, by the week, or by the month. It's been 10 years ago now, on October 2012. We got hit by Superstorm Sandy, knocked the power out, knocked the phones out. My cell phone battery was soon dead, and it took a few days to find a way to recharge it. The bar was closed, but I was in there with several candles burning. In the dim light, I was seeing if the glassware could be secured a little better. I hadn't locked the door, though, and in the midst of the storm, high winds and drive-in rain, a couple stumbled into my bar. They were drenched, soaking wet, still clutching their useless inside-out umbrellas. They both looked maybe Hispanic, maybe Middle Eastern, I couldn't tell. The woman was around 25 or 30 and was very pregnant, about to pop. The man looked a little older, but maybe that was just his beard. I said, "Can I help you?" The woman said, "I sure hope so." I could tell from the sound of her voice, this was not good. I said, "Lady, maybe you need the hospital. There's a hospital just 3 blocks north from you." "I just came from there," she said, on the verge of tears. "The power's out. The backup generators are out. The hospital wouldn't take us. They can't. Yours was the first door that was open." "What do you need?" "We just need a dry place for one day," said the man. "We can't get home in this storm." "You can't stay here," I told him. "I'm all full up." The two of them stood there looking at me. The guy decided to go for the sociable approach. He stepped forward, stuck out his hand, and said, "I'm Joseph. This is my wife, Mary." "Mary and Joseph. Of course you are," I said. "I don't care if you're Simon and Garfunkel. I don't have a room. I got the Barbescues in room 1, Charlie Fillmore in room 2, Patterson in room 3, Billy D'Angelo in room 4, the Robertses in room 5, and Sandra Duquesne in room 6. I'm full." Slowly, they turned. They got to the door. Joseph had his hand on the knob when my wife, Miriam, popped up. I guess she'd been listening the whole time. Miriam said, "We got a garage." Oh, geez, Miriam, I was thinking, but the truth is, this couple was breaking my heart. And I'm glad she said it. I made a big sigh and I said, "Yeah, we got a garage. Nothing to sleep on." Joseph said, "We don't need anything. A little floor until the storm lets up." So I got a candle and I led them downstairs to the garage. It was no stable, no cow, no horse, but it did have a Mustang. A 1964 vintage Mustang, in fact. I just finished fixing it all up, good as new. Beautiful new paint job, royal blue with white racing stripes. It was my pride and joy. It was a project I'd been working on for 2 years, and just a few days before, I'd put an ad in a car magazine that it was for sale. Wouldn't be easy to part with, but it was time to let somebody else enjoy this wonderful car, and for me to see some profit from my labors. Anyways, I showed Mary and Joseph to a corner. I gathered an old coat, an old quilt I had, so they'd have a little bit of padding between them and the floor, and I went back to my bar. Billy D'Angelo came from room 4, came down. I told him the whole story. He went down to the garage, met this Mary and Joseph, and before I knew it, he came running back up. Mary's water broke, he blurted out, and then out the door he ran, right into the storm. No raincoat, nothing, just straight out the door. Now Miriam and I were beside ourselves. We didn't know what to do. Boil some water, get some towels, the clean ones. But in just 10 or 15 minutes, back came Billy, and he brought a couple with him. Billy was soaking wet, and the couple were wearing full-length yellow ponchos. They're doctors, he said. We met last week. They just moved in around the corner, so I went to get them. The woman shook my hand and introduced herself. I'm Dr. Deborah Shepard, she said, out of breath. I'm an obstetrician. This is my husband, Michael. He's a pediatrician. Each of them was carrying a black satchel, just like doctors in the old movies. Okay, let me get this straight, I said. You're the Shepards, and you're here on account of D'Angelo told you to come. The doctor's shepherd nodded. So I led them downstairs, and they went straight to Mary. Anything you can do to get us more light, said Dr. Michael. So Miriam and I went rounding up all the flashlights and candles we could find, and that's when the priest, the rabbi, and the Buddhist monk walked into my bar. They looked remarkably dry, given the storm. Call me Barry, said the priest. I'm Sam, said the rabbi. Frank, nodded the Buddhist monk. They each had a copy of the car magazine in their hands. We are members of a Mustang fan club, and we've been looking for a 64 Mustang for a long time, said the priest, Barry. We would brave any storm for a chance at a good one. Supposedly, you've got one that's quite the car of wonder, said Rabbi Sam. Then he opened the car magazine and read from my ad, car of wonder, car of night, car of royal blue and white. So what could I do but show them the car? I took them down to the garage. I said, there you go. You've come following yonder car. The Buddhist monk, Frank, said, I can't help but noticing that there's a woman who appears to be giving birth right next to your car of wonder. Correction, said Dr. Deborah, has given birth, and she lifted up a tiny baby. The most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It seemed to glow and light up the whole garage. But maybe that was just the electricity flickering briefly for a moment just then. Is there something to wrap him in? Said Dr. Michael. Miriam ran and got a T-shirt. She started babbling about how the T-shirt belonged to her nephew, who's a model. And in fact, he had once done a shoot wearing that exact T-shirt. I took the shirt from Miriam and handed it to Dr. Michael. Let me, said Mary, sitting up and taking the shirt. You can set him down right here, I said, opening the car door and indicating the bucket seat. It was the only thing that was upholstered or reasonably soft and clean. So Mary, she wrapped the babe in modeling clothes and laid him in a Mustang. The babe's feet were sticking out. Sam took off his fur-lined mittens and gently slid one over each foot, and they went up to the knee. Frank lit a stick of incense in one of the candles. Barry looked from Mary to Joseph and said, a new hope is born. A new love, said Sam. A new faith, said Frank. Barry reached into his pocket and pulled out a gold coin. This was given to me by a parishioner about a year ago. Let me give it to you now in token of this blessing that is to you and also to all of us. He handed the coin to Joseph, who took it, his lower lip trembling. Miriam leaned over and whispered to me, gold. And Frank's incense, I said. And fur, she added, pointing to the mittens on the babe's leg. There we were, 10 of us. Mary, Joseph, the two doctors, Billy D'Angelo, Barry, Sam, Frank, Miriam, and me gathered around a shining babe, sleeping in a shiny muscle car. Nobody said a word. A tremendous peace descended over us. Outside, the storm howled on. But there inside the garage, we were safe and saved. We came together to help each other when there was need. That connection of care, that's our salvation. We were there for each other. And in the middle of a huge storm, we brought a new life into this world.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. But in that cool desert air on that night so long ago, the shepherds and the magi looked up at the sky that was lit only by the flames of distant stars. They accepted the dark. They had no choice. Today, in the age of electric light, we banish the darkness with a flip of a switch. We have a choice. Sometimes we keep the lights on in order that we can see one another and understand better. And sometimes we keep the lights on in order to avoid the lonely, frightening darkness. We can stay in our safe spaces with our electronic lights, or we can decorate trees in the night and see who has come to join us. We can lose ourselves in the frenzied commercialism of the holidays, or we can stop for a moment and experience the darkness that comes when the earth turns its face away from the sun. We can scientifically dissect the story of Christmas, or we can enter into the miracle of birth, sacrifice, and redemption. May we allow ourselves this Christmas Eve to enter into darkness and each contribute our own small light to this sacred space. When the flame arrives, please light your candle from the person next to you by leaning the unlighted candle into the lighted one. Keep the lighted candles upright. Adults, please help children hold their candles. We will sit in silence while we light the candles. When everyone's candle is lighted, we'll sing Silent Night. Then there will be another pause before we blow out the candles, turn the lights up, and rise in body or spirit to sing Joy to the World. We invite you to take the candle with you and use it to light your candle at home tonight or tomorrow.
I invite you to join me and Lord Kim and Tracy in Fellowship Hall after we're done for Russian tea and whatever else might be there. And these benedictory words are from Howard Thurman. When the song of angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home and the shepherds back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among others, and to make music in the heart. Go in peace.